Hello everybody, Gamer219 here, and let's talk about that movie that I had watched recently, which I had done a reaction to, a trailer reaction. It's called Titanic Sit Sit Sits, or Triple Sits. So, in my last opinion on my last video about it, of course I always said like why I even made the movie that of course nobody really would have wanted to see it and such. Well, nobody's really asked for, and and of course I always thought it was gonna be like just like a cheesy, stupid kind of movie and such. But then I thought to myself, well, no, let me just go ahead and give it a watch, and then I after watching, it, I said, you know what, let me do a little review about it. So and then so what I think that if they removed the name Titanic and made the story like a little bit more improvement, then it would, as well as maybe some more scares and such. It actually would have been a pretty good decent ghost story kind of film. There were some scenes that were kind of like iffy-ish, as well as like only like maybe a very small amount of characters that you actually feel for, and then characters that you kind of don't really care at all, and so so there's gonna be a lot of spoilers ahead. So if you wish not to be spoiled, you can skip this video. Um, but if you don't want to see it but still want to know how it went, continue watching. But overall, I give this movie about like a 50-50 ish. So again, this is gonna be heavy spoilers, and of course, gonna be dealing yeah, just heavy spoilers and such. So on the first part, it's gonna be like the film. The second part will actually cover the opening sequence, and then my overall thoughts maybe. So the movie actually opens up with like a little bit of like a flashback like kind of setting in which it just shows the sinking of Titanic as it sinks into the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, and that's about it really. And then there's a transition going from the Titanic's wreck, which we'll talk about in the next part of the video, and goes from the Titanic's wreck to the current day Titanic, and which is called the Titanic 3. And so and there we are introduced to of course several characters. There's I think it was like they said it was Instagram or TikTok. They're normally named like social media influencers, a couple, and then of course introduced to the captain, to the owner of the Titanic 3, which he also owns like all this artifacts that recovered from the wreck, and then also just like a very small amount of characters also. And then as the ship begins its next voyage, well, actually, I think they said it was a maiden voyage. But as it began sailing, of course, we're introduced to another character, and it was an a um a stowaway. And then on the first couple of days, there was a planned route in which they were gonna sail through the Atlantic, stop and give some respects to the people who died on Titanic, before sailing on to the UK in London. Well, not London. I think it was Southampton. And so, so for the stowaway, well, we see that she has and in the beginning we'll see that she has quite a bit of connection with several artifacts, with just the way she was holding the violin, and then we also see and find out that she, that one of the artifacts as she quotes it, looks a lot similar to her grandmother's. And then, of course, seeing how she was touching artifacts that was recovered from the red side, of course, infuriated the the owner of the artifacts, because in a way, of course, in one way it's understandable, because I mean, if you're handling with a lot of delicate stuff, and anything wrong could happen to any old object and such. And then of course, some more drama between the artifact owner and social media influencer couple, um, to which of course, basically, like, the owner is like not really much paying attention to much of it and such. He like doesn't really much care about much of that whole social media craze and such. And then of course we're introduced to the one of the guards on the Titanic, and then he kind of guides the couple to their rooms that they got themselves lost in, and while trying to find the room, of course. Um, One more thing I want to add before we go further is, in the conversation between the artifact owner and the stowaway, was that she asked him, like, brings up the whole topic about stealing items from a grave site, and basically it's like an everyday, well, not everyday, but it's like a kind of a big topic of when it comes to artifacts and the museums, especially when regarding items like the Titanic. Of course, some people would feel like they should stay in the bottom of the ocean. Others would feel like no. In one way, it's kind of nice to see some of the objects brought about, see and learn more about these people who lived in that era before they died, and so something like that has always been kind of like a more of a back and forth argument kind of thing. Moving forward, so about the night of when they arrived on at the red site, that's when the stowaway actually has a lot of what do you call it? Maybe like some kind of a devil worshipping kind of thing, in which she like used her blood and some other spells to call upon the spirits of the people who died on board the Titanic. And so the first to arrive was, of course, Captain Edward Smith, the captain of the Titanic. And it's revealed later on that the stowaway, is the granddaughter of the Captain Smith. Um, Going back to the top side, well, actually, before Captain Smith's reveal, the, the 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 social media couple actually wandered about on the ship, found themselves in the cargo hold, and that's when they saw the stowaway doing that dark magic stuff, and then of course they ran into to one of their fans, and then they decided to just leave the stowaway to doing dark magic. And so after doing all that stuff, going back to the couple, they were just wandering around on the top of the deck after doing the memorial service, and then that's when everything goes wrong. So what happened next is that the next spirit to come back from the dead was one of the musicians who went down on the Titanic. It's not entirely kind of really told of which musician it was, but more than likely it could have been their version of Wallace, the lead musician of the original band. And so what ends up happening next is that the couple, they're the only ones who hear the music playing in the background. So while doing a live stream, they're dancing and such, and then all of a sudden that's when a loud shrieking noise is heard, and it's like a soft tuned shrieking sound of like fingernails stretching on the chalkboard, like you would see in all those other old films, and this is like heard not just with them, but it's heard all over the Titanic 3. And then what happened next is that the boyfriend of the social media couple gets pulled away and just vanishes, like in the movie The Fog or Darkness Falls, that kind of thing, and it just leaves his girlfriend there. Now the shrieking stops, and then the girlfriend's looking all over, and she can't find the boyfriend. Approaching her, however, is the artifact owner, and as they have a little small conversation about what happened when they were on top side to when he runs into them. They decide to go back inside for a drink, but that's when the girl came back to grab her phone. And right when she grabbed her phone, that's when she looks up to see the musician standing there, and she's like horrified at what she's seen. And then that's when, with some kind of direction of his violin, holding the violin stick, he just like kind of shoots upward, and it kind of like snapped the neck to the social media influencer. And of course, the artifact owner, he's already long gone back inside. Everything else goes wrong on board the Titanic 3, from one, the ghost of the engineer coming and killing the current engineer of Titanic 3, and then causing malfunction on Titanic 3, and which of course is like, since everything's all like state of the art electrical, everything just goes wrong. Because all of a sudden, Titanic 3 stops moving and then it starts moving, but somehow the engines are not fully running. And as they're trying to, as the captain and I think it was the bodyguard, as they try to stop the engines, because now it's all of a sudden it's like they're gonna like overwhelmed itself. They tried to shut down everything, but they couldn't, and then they had to get out, and that's when one of the engines blown up, and it looked like it might have caused like a small hole breached in the Titanic 3. But not only that, but it also kind of shut off the engines completely, causing Titanic 3 to just slowly adrift. So I think one of the people, or one of the guards, came back, find the girlfriend of the social media influencer, and calls for the captain and more security. And as they tried to review over the footage, they could barely see anything that had happened to her. And the last person to see her was the artifact owner, in which they brought him in for questioning, but nothing much is progressed further. And then, so pretty much, more ghosts came. One ghost sees an old lady with this fancy jewelry necklace that the artifact owner gave her, and the ghost just kind of strangled the old lady's neck, causing her to like kind of like, basically what it looked like it did was it took the necklace and just kind of like made it more tight, and then just so that way it could just cut through the lady's neck. In a way, I don't really see how, unless of course it's the type of material used for it. And so then there was a little bit like uneasiness, and then of course passengers told to head back inside, and then not only that, but trying to get hold of the Coast Guard or anybody to try and rescue them. As for the stowaway herself, I mean, she comes back, and then she causes more panic, in which she told the artifact owner that she put a curse on the ship, and then of course the guard decides to take her to the captain, to the bridge. And then not only that, but the artifact owner, I think after he was interrogated, he was being escorted to his room, and that's when all of a sudden there was another ghost, and it killed the guard that was escorting the owner in off screen. And so what actually had happened before then was that the stowaway, she met with Captain Smith again, and then they did some sort of connection thing, and then now when she was on the bridge, after knocking out the guard and a few other bridge crew, she went onto the computer screen and set the coordinates, and then which causes Titanic 3 to just have again a mind of its own and just gonna run straight towards an iceberg. And turns out that the girl was now being possessed by the ghost of Captain Edward Smith. And after the captain of the Titanic 3 is trying to get Captain Smith to stop the ship and prevent any tragic deaths on board the passengers, Captain Smith just said, "You're right. He could just stop the ship, but he never did, and he just ended up killing the stowaway." So what happens next is that Titanic 3 strikes an iceberg, and then it now starts to sink. And the reason why it starts to sink, even though it's supposed to be in the modern day and supposed to have all these safety features, but Titanic 3 is acting like as if all the watertight doors were not brought down. So of course that's where the accelerated sinking comes in. And so the next person to die was I believe the one of the bodyguards, in which he sees the I guess a I don't know if it's either the ghost or it's a zombie of the girlfriend of the social media influencer, and but he was seen grabbing the nearby jewelry from people that might have dropped him, and then he was gonna try and sell them, and when he sees the zombie, and she ends up killing him, and then all of a sudden he comes back as I guess as ghost or zombie or whatsoever, sees another individual. I forgot what role important role, if any, that she was a part of, but nevertheless, what he did was that the Titanic 3 had one of the original lifeboats just hanging overhead on the ceiling. Either it's the original or maybe a replica of it, but it's hanging overhead on the ceiling on full display, and then it just drops right on top of the lady. And then so as the evacuation order is given and Titan's sinking rapidly, the captain was able to get everyone onto lifeboats, and then as for the artifact owner himself, she told him that if you want to try and save everyone, then get everyone to lifeboats, especially as he went into a historic panicked state in which he's like can barely focus on anything at all. So he did his best on getting the passengers to lifeboats, and then that's when, of course, after that he sees Captain Smith's ghost. And so the captain of Titanic 3, after getting everyone off the ship, and then of course the lifeboat somehow the ropes or connector snapped, and it just falls straight into the ocean. That's when Titanic 3's now at hers final plunge, and just straight up sinks into the ocean, in which they actually skipped a lot, in which it just shows the bridge submerging, and then later the next scene comes in, it just shows the stern just sinking beneath the sea. So now so in the final scene, we see the artifact owner sitting in the lifeboat, and his arms, like right around the sleeves, they're pretty slightly bloody, and then that's when it turns out the captain of Titanic 3 survives, and then he pulls her up, and they kind of discuss a little bit about if he managed to get everyone onto lifeboats and such, and if there was any help coming, and assuring that it was, and everything's. Some of the passengers were safe. That's when the artifact owner dies. With the captain now worried, that's when all of a sudden he becomes some kind of a zombie ghoul and attacks the captain off screen, which of course leads into the credits. Um, so, a couple of things actually. One, the since there's a Titanic 3, there's obviously a Titanic 2, but if it were to be taken in the same timeline or universe as the Titanic 2, there's no mention of it at all, period, about the events of Titanic 2. In which, in Titanic 2, Titanic 2 gets hit by an iceberg riding on a tsunami tidal wave on the 100th anniversary of the original sinking. And then of course Titanic 2 sinks with only about like maybe 5 people surviving, I want to say. Basically how it went was a couple of people got off the ship to an emergency helicopter because they were like severely injured after the iceberg strikes Titanic first, and then towards the end, as the Titanic was slowly sinking further, it was just the head nurse, the owner of Titanic 2, the nurse's father, just left. And then, of course, another tsunami comes in and capsizes Titanic 2 as she's in like a list, well, not a list, but as she's going down by the head. The tsunami also topples over the lifeboats, destroying them basically with the passengers inside. And then Titanic 2 eventually creates a suction and just sinks beneath the sea. And then, of course, the head nurse and her dad made it out, while the owner of Titanic 2 drowns and such. Which, of course, in that film, there was a lot of cheesy CGI in it, and basically just going into the topic of global warming and such. And so, no mention of any events whatsoever in that film. The social media couple, they were quite obnoxious, I want to say. As truth to be told, when they died, I actually did feel satisfied. It was like saying thank you. I mean, like they were really kind of annoying and such. Um, what else? Uh, I want to say that's about it. But if something comes into mind, I'll bring it up and drop the video and such. Okay, so that's the end of the end of that part. So now let's talk about the opening sequence. So if if you're more about accuracies, then this film is of course not for you. But if you just want to watch it for the fun of it, then of course enjoy. But so the film opens up with the sinking of Titanic in like a little flashback, like sequence. Um, but it starts off with, of course, the film's version of the most famous song, "Near My God to Thee," and I'll tell you that it's actually pretty good, very enjoyable to hear, and especially when you hear it again on the sinking of Titanic 3. And so, going back on the in the opening, So it opens up with Titanic sinking, and their focus was towards making it more dramatic, um, and sense of urgency, as they show like a guy hanging on, and then he falls to the water. Another passenger hanging on, and you see a lifeboat being just tossed over. More people jumping ship, and then of course some the rockets being shot out, and then they introduce us to about three characters that we only just see them. Two of them you only just see them, I guess, just once, and then of course the third one being Captain Smith. And so the two characters, I believe, they said the name was Charles and Beth. Um, they it looked like they were like two couples, and they got separated in the sinking of Titanic, and so Charles was able to see Beth, but she's like just going in an opposite direction, and meanwhile Charles's friends are trying to get him onto a lifeboat, trying to help him get into a lifeboat and such. And then, as the ship sinks, Captain Smith is then seen leading everyone to the lifeboats, and he tells the Bess to get onto a lifeboat and sit there, and then of course they're gonna get ready to lower the away. That's when all of a sudden there was like a snapping sound, and then you just see the ropes just uh, getting loose, and the lifeboat just falls straight into the water, which I'm guessing it dumps its occupants. And then we see, of course, the Titanic's lights goes out, and then the scene then cuts to Beth just hanging on an overturned lifeboat, calling out to Charles as she sees Titanic just slipping away, and then that's when she while feeling that she may never see Charles again, she sees like a bowler hat, like a roundish top hat, and she believes it might belong to Charles. And as she's trying to reach out to grab him, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a guy comes out, and looks like he's possessed, and he grabs Beth and just pulls her under the water. That's when the title comes in, and then as it's showing the credits of the cast members and such, you'll see a Titanic just slipping beneath the surface, disappearing into darkness, with several objects sinking beside it before hitting the ocean floor. And then, of course, that's when they also had. There's a scene transition in which it transitions from Titanic being on the ocean floor, and of course, in the same position, the camera angle shot, it transitions to Titanic 3 in the present day time. So, there, to me, as someone who's like kind of read a lot on Titanic, there was easily point out of inaccuracies, but I also noticed a lot of continuity error that you're gonna see in some of the scenes I'm gonna pull up. One thing I do want to talk about also is that it looks more like the studio combined Titanic sinking with the sinking of the Lusitania, mostly with how Lusitania sank in her last moments, as well as what happened to her lifeboats. While as Titanic, of course, you got pretty much how it sank and such. But let's go ahead and check out the scenes and in the opening sequence that I want to show you, and then we'll go on to the next part of the video. Okay, so here we're seeing the Titanic sinking. Here we have a gentleman falls, the stern is rising. But then here's where we see some inaccuracies. So we just saw the lifeboat fall, and in history, none of them ever did. Then of course you see the fireworks, and then here we have Bess that I had mentioned, and then the guy with the bowler hat that's calling out to her. That would be Charles. Back to this scene, uh, pay close attention to Titanic, and you'll see just how far the water has reached the ship, and it looks like it has already submerged the bridge area. And so in the next scene, you're gonna see is where another inaccuracy comes in which we see now the water is really below the bridge area. And then in another scene, it's gonna be hard to tell, but just from the angle of Titanic, and you can barely see it towards her bottom hull, but you'll see just how much of an angle she is. But she's is like almost like a more of a bad angle because from the looks of it, it looks like the peak of the angle is right around maybe after the second funnel. But of course, it just makes it look maybe it could be just a perspective. And then on the next scene, of course, the lifeboat loses its grip and it just falls straight down into the water, almost like to one of the lifeboats that had fell off the Lusitania. And then on the next scene, you're gonna see Titanic slowly disappearing beneath the waves. But the way she's acting as she sinks, it's almost like the survivors' accounts to Lusitania, in which the last bits of her was the funnels and a bit of a stern and the mast. And then on the next scene, this one is a real blink and you'll miss it moment. So if you were to watch this, and you're gonna wanna like watch it, this scene in a more slower pace, but you're gonna notice one continuity error, and this was at the moment that the girl was dragged into the water by a possessed passenger, and you're gonna notice that Titanic is sinking behind her. So that's a little bit of a funny error that you just witnessed Titanic is gone, but then now when she's pulled into the water, Titanic is there again. With of course looks like she's barely sinking. So. Okay, so another thing I forgot to mention though is that the film takes place on board Queen Mary, which of course, just like its predecessor, um, I have seen a couple of bit of comments, people saying that it's kind of stupid or weird for them to be filming on the Queen Mary when when it's supposed to be like an old White Star Line shaped era ship, but it's actually not really much unusual as the I believe it's a straight to television series, the SOS Titanic. Back around the 80s, it was filmed on board Queen Mary in many of its interior shots as um, some of the hallways and corridors, and I think they said parts of the engine room looked almost similar to White Star Line's Olympic class of Titanic. But considering also the fact that Queen Mary was a Cunard line, so there might have been some inspiration with Olympic class in terms of interior design and such. And so, which of course you'll kind of see recognize some shots being the Queen Mary, in which you'll see some of the forward deck and the bridge on the scene where the couple dances to of course recognize I think it's the Queen Mary. If not, it's probably just a bunch of props, studio made. But of course, some of the lifeboat davits, for the smaller lifeboats and such. Um, what else? Mm. All in all, the film wasn't that bad. And again, like I said, if they took out the name Titanic and did more with the script, it actually would have been a very great film. And of course, it's not really unusual to use a model of Titanic, to use as a ship. As this one, I forgot the name, but I know some of y'all might remember it. But in the plot of the story was there was a baby born on a ship. Its parents died during the voyage, I believe, and it grew up living on board the ship. And it has a talent of playing a piano. I will say. I think the ship was going to be destroyed or something. I don't exactly remember what or why, the reasoning. But the last scene, it would show this man trying to get the piano player off the ship, but he refuses and he plays the piano one last time. And then that's when the ship blew up. And of course, the ship is a four funnel liner, um, that it looks a lot similar to Titanic's shape and such. And so, going back to Titanic, triple sits, I think they could have done well with using a an ocean liner model like that for a ghost story and such. I would probably stick with maybe demons or ghost. While having those like zombie-like characters, it's doesn't really make much sense. In a way. Plus, we don't fully see exactly what happens to the bodies. Like they just die off screen, except for the lady, and then they come back with just black eye sockets and such, and then they just go and kill people. So I would say keep them as like ghouls or demon ghost, that spirit gets corrupted by anything really and such. And an ironic twist of fate also, the ghost of Captain Edward Smith, he is last seen standing in the bridge of Titanic 3 as Titanic 3 sinks beneath the waves, and which of course the same goes, captain goes down with the ship, and then of course, being that the captain sink, be, sorry, is in the bridge as Titanic 3 sinks, along with many of the artifacts that was once taken away from the original wreck and now gets put back into the Atlantic Ocean and such. So, but other than that, that's about it. I can honestly say about this short review talk about the film Titanic Triple Sits. And if y'all want to check it out, feel free. Go ahead and check it out. So I think that's about it. So until next time, everybody, see you soon.